Memoirs of Aunt Martha. On my birthday, I got a text from my son. We're slammed with Mia's fam. Let's do a rain check on yours next year. Folks often ask, how could a mother just walk away from the very home she built with her own 2 hands? I didn't walk away. I simply couldn't stay. Not in a place where my being there felt like a major inconvenience. My name is Martha, 72, a widow. I live in a quaint coastal town in Maine with my son Scott, his wife Alyssa, and my granddaughter Mia. For years I got used to making meals nobody touched, storing cakes in the fridge nobody asked about, teaching Mia to be honest and kind, only to be told I was old school. Alyssa wanted Mia to be competitive, score scholarships, make a name for herself. All I wanted was for her to be comfortable in her own skin. But in that house, my 2 cents were usually muffled by the slam of a closing door. If you've ever felt yourself slowly fading into the background of your own family, you're not alone. This isn't just the story of a mother quietly leaving the home she once protected with everything she had. It's about something deeper. What made her choose to vanish around Christmas, and how that choice changed her family for good. The story I'm about to tell is real. It's the journey of how I walked out of the house they called home to finally find my way back to myself. And it all started on what seemed like any other day, my birthday. On my birthday, the only message I got said, "We're with Mia at her friend's. Rain check for next year." Okay. I put the phone down on the antique wooden table. No dramatic gesture, just a slow, quiet exhale. The cinnamon apple pie had just cooled. The crust had cracked slightly on the edges, but the aroma was still warm, still comforting. I'd planned to put it on the table alongside the red plaid runner I'd ironed that morning. Red brick fireplace, soft yellow lamplight overhead, a mason jar with a few sprigs of evergreen. I'd imagined a simple dinner, a few familiar faces, maybe a nice word or 2. I didn't ask for the moon, but that small hope was canceled by a text message under 20 words. I didn't answer. Didn't even delete it. I just stood there for a long time, as if waiting for a second text, a follow-up, an apology, maybe even a hint of guilt in their tone. But the silence held. Nothing came. I folded the runner neatly and put it back in the drawer, wrapped the pie in foil and slid it into the fridge. The house was dead quiet. Alyssa and Scott had left early. Said they were making a quick stop at Mia's friend's house, then heading to Alyssa's parents'. Swamped tonight. That's all they said. Mia had texted, "Sorry, Gram. I'll make it up to you." She added a sad face emoji. An emoji. I didn't blame her. She's 17. Stuck between a low-key grandmother and a high-strung mother. At least she tried. That was enough. I put on my coat. Every move was slow, deliberate, as if my body needed time to accept that the show was over. The wind whistled outside the door. I pulled my collar up and stepped onto the street. Snow dusted the town like powdered sugar, clinging to windshields. People were already putting up their Christmas lights, red and gold, twinkling in white window frames, small pine trees still wrapped in netting. Nobody was shouting with joy, but the air felt warm, the kind of warmth that comes from having a reason to go home. I wasn't going far, just to the coffee shop near the library. Clara owns it. She was in my English class way back when. She always remembers my birthday. Every year 1 free latte. "Happy B-Day, Marth," she'd say, keeping it simple. She didn't ask why I was alone. Just poured the coffee and added a slice of homemade zucchini bread. I nodded. My little table looked out onto Main Street. A little kid was jumping over a slush puddle, holding a donut, powdered sugar smeared all over his cheeks. His grandma called after him, "Watch it, Buster." Worried but happy. I sipped the coffee, my hands stiff, my eyes not as sharp as they used to be, but that familiar bitterness still sparked a memory. I used to bring Mia here when she was small. We'd sit at this very table. She loved the cinnamon buns, always asking for extra frosting. Later, Alyssa put the kibosh on it. Said sweets were bad for grades. Said, "This place isn't appropriate for children," so I stopped. I didn't fight it. I came home just before 6. The sky had turned a flat gray. A narrow stripe of dim light stretched across the kitchen floor through the window. I didn't flip the light switch. My shadow fell against the wall, old and still. The cinnamon scent was faint. I opened the fridge, took the pie out, placed it on the table and just looked at it for a while. Not because I was hungry, just out of habit. Something real to focus on so I didn't have to look at myself. I reached for the plastic wrap, peeled back the corner, thought about writing Mia's name on a little note, then stopped. My hands were trembling not from age, but because I knew that pie would never be cut. I put it back, then went up to the attic. That's where I keep the old stuff, wedding portraits, hand-knit baby blankets, a few boxes of birthday cards Mia made in elementary school. I pulled up a wooden chair and sat down, surrounded by cold and dust. The wind slipped through the window cracks, stirring the lace curtain. There was a photo of me and Mia when she turned 6. Pigtails holding a tiny cake with a number 6 candle. I stood next to her, beaming. My eyes were bright, not just from the candle's flicker, but from sheer belief. I didn't cry. I just looked at the woman in the photo, then looked at myself now and wondered, do I still even belong in that house? A quiet question like a crack in the mirror, invisible to others, but stinging every time you glance at it. The pie is still there. I went back downstairs and put the kettle on. Made myself a cup of peppermint tea. The kitchen was still neat, still spotless, but nobody cared. Nobody thought about the hands that scrubbed it clean every single day. I'm not a winner. I'm not the type to keep score. But I was starting to realize that when you stay quiet for too long, people begin to treat your existence as optional. The pie is still in there. The fridge is humming, but nobody asks about it. And for the first time in my life, I asked myself, if I disappeared, would anyone even notice? She didn't yell at me. Alyssa never had to. All she needed to do was close the door every time I tried to talk to Mia. The entryway downstairs no longer echoed with small footsteps in the afternoon. I still brewed tea and poured 2 cups like always. The only difference now, no one touched the second cup. The pie was still in the fridge. I didn't open it anymore. This morning I found a note Alyssa had left on the counter. Mia needs her own space. Please understand. The handwriting was neat, black Sharpie. No birthday wishes. No signature. Just a few lines like a billing statement. Clear. Detached. I still wiped the counters down. Still folded the cloth napkins. The red ones with the lace trim. The same ones I used for Mia's 6th birthday party that year. She'd smeared icing all over my face and laughed so hard she practically squeaked. Now the table is still clean, but the seat across from me is always empty. One time I walked into Mia's room, just to ask if she wanted chicken pot pie for dinner. Alyssa was there. She stood up and gently shut the door. Didn't say a word. Polite. Measured. But it was all the message I needed. There was no room for me in her space anymore. I had tried to believe I was still a part of this house, even a tiny part. A ghost by the stove. A pair of hands that silently did the laundry. But Alyssa didn't attack head-on. She cleared the space around me softly, deliberately. And Scott, he stuck to his MO, avoidance. A quick pat on the shoulder every so often, as if that was enough to call it communication. That afternoon, I was folding laundry and happened to spot an envelope tucked between Mia's schoolbooks, handwritten. Nosy, I opened it. It was an application to a writing program, Boston address. Mia had written, I'm not good at piano. I want to write screenplays. I haven't told my mom. My grandma says, do what you love. I sat down on the bed. I didn't know if she'd mailed it yet, but the stamp was unused and the letter was hidden. That night I didn't cook anything. Alyssa had work guests over. They popped open white wine, served fancy seafood appetizers, baked brie. The smell of grilled shrimp crept up the stairs, clinging to the curtains and the tablecloth I had just washed. I stayed in my room. No one called for me. I heard Mia excuse herself to go upstairs. A chair scraped softly, a door closed. Silence. I sat there with the application on my lap, picked up a pen, and wrote a few lines to my granddaughter. I once wanted to be a registered nurse, but your grandpa said, we don't need another caretaker. Just take care of the kids. I don't blame him. But I still wonder if I hadn't backed down then, would things have been different, Mia? If you still want to write, then write, kiddo. I wasn't sure I should give it to her. I put the note in a plain white envelope. No name on it. The next morning I slipped it under her plate, but Alyssa came down first. She cleared the tray, poured the orange juice, and no one mentioned the letter. I went back to my room and stood by the window. Outside, the wind was tearing the last leaves off the trees by the porch. In the distance I heard the school bus horn. Mia walked out wearing headphones, a heavy coat. She didn't look back. I wanted to run out to say something, to take her hand, or at least fix her collar, but I couldn't move. Something held me back. A quiet chain between me and the doorway. I didn't speak, didn't tap on the glass. I just stood there until Mia's shape blurred behind the bus window. That afternoon, I heard her whispering in her room. A video call. "Where's your grandma?" "She's busy." Her voice was shaky. The friend on the other end laughed. "But she tells the best ghost stories." "Go get her," I heard. Mia went silent, then quietly said, "She doesn't live here anymore." I didn't go in. I turned away. I knew she didn't mean it literally, but she'd learned how to choose her words carefully. Alyssa had taught her well. That night, I thought about going to Mia's room just to say I'm still here. But when I got to the door, a soft yellow light spilled through the crack. Mia's eyes looked puffy. She lay curled up, holding the wooden box, the one where I kept her grandfather's letters. The lid was slightly open, but I didn't knock. I stood there, counting my breaths. Not long after, Alyssa appeared. She gently pulled the door shut. A soft click. I went back to my room, lay down on the bed, and left the light on. I used to think being ignored was the worst thing, but now I know it's when people start erasing you completely. Mia got a crush on a classmate. She told her parents, and the first thing they did was ground her, confiscate her phone, and cut off contact with me. The news didn't come in words. It came through absence. No footsteps, no chairs moving, no doors opening. Just the porch light glowing through the night with no one coming out. I knew something was wrong when I saw the landline unplugged. For the first time in 10 years, I heard the upstairs door lock. Scott changed the Wi-Fi password. Alyssa sent a single line in the family email. "We need to adjust the environment so Mia can focus on her studies. No contact for now." For now. A gentle phrase used to shut someone out for good. I didn't call, didn't ask. I waited, but no one came downstairs. On the night of the Christmas light parade, the houses down the street lit up like a movie set. The smell of hot cider and distant music drifted in from the town center. I sat in the living room and opened an old photo album. My hands trembled, my eyes blurred. But one picture held me longer than the rest. I was 17. Curly hair, a knee-length dress, standing next to a vintage ice cream truck at my high school. I was smiling and my eyes just like Mia's. Under the pillow in my room, I found a scrap of paper. Pencil written, no punctuation, shaky handwriting. "If you still believe in me, don't let me end up like you." I held it all night. Didn't fold it. Didn't hide it. The next morning, I went to Mia's school. Her guidance counselor said she'd been out for a few days for personal reasons. I asked, "Is she okay?" She looked down, didn't answer. I stood outside the school for a long time. Red leaves covered the benches. It wasn't raining, but the air felt charged. Clara picked me up in her car, my old friend, the only one I'd kept in touch with after I retired. We didn't talk much. She drove me along the coast. This time of year, fog hugs the rocks. At one point she stopped, didn't look at me, just said, "Martha, maybe it's time you saved your own skin." I got home just before 5 p.m. The sky was dimming like an old photograph, fading at the edges. Upstairs was quiet. I didn't go up. I went straight to the reading room. The old fireplace crackled softly. In the low light, I opened the bottom drawer and pulled out an old file folder. Some pages still had coffee rings. The corners were curled from time and moisture. Bank forms, asset authorizations, transfer receipts, retirement statements. I didn't look at the figures. I looked at the signatures, mine and Scott's, the date, the note. Full authorization granted to son. I remembered Scott saying, "It's just for convenience, Mom. Taxes and stuff." I didn't ask more. Back then, I still believed people wouldn't take advantage of their own mother's trust. I sat at the dining table and took scissors to each page, not to shred them, but to sort them by date, by order, as if to say, "This charade is over." I reprinted every form, reactivated old accounts, changed passwords. I didn't know all the moves, but I found tutorials online. I took notes, learned slowly but meticulously. I opened a new savings account in my name only. No sharing, no fanfare. That night, I placed the stack of documents on the dining table, not as a declaration of war, but as a reminder to myself that I still existed. I brewed tea, sat quietly, didn't turn on the TV. I thought of Mia. Of that pencil-written line with no punctuation. The folder I used to think I was protecting my children by staying silent, by stepping back, by swallowing my truth. Now I know that staying quiet for too long is a kind of betrayal too. The next morning, Alyssa walked past the table and glanced at the folder. She said nothing, but her expression shifted. Not surprise, not confusion, calculation. I didn't respond, didn't explain. I went back to my room and reopened the photo album. The photo of me at 17 had slipped loose. I picked it up and looked at it for a long time. Back then no one stood guard beside me. And now no one does either. But this time I didn't feel lonely. I felt like myself. I can't save Mia. Not if I keep living like a ghost in this house. I've already lost too much by retreating. And now I know if I don't step out of that shadow, Mia will be swallowed by the same silence that once consumed me. I didn't get mad. I didn't snap back. I simply placed the folder on the table neatly beside a vase of wilted flowers no one had remembered to change. No one was in the kitchen. Scott and Alyssa had taken Mia out early. Intense SAT prep, they'd said. I heard the upstairs door close. No one came downstairs. No one said good morning. No one noticed. I had been up for over an hour. I made coffee decaf, poured half a cup, and left it there. On the wooden table I laid out a pale blue folder. No lock, no string, no note. But inside was something they'd need to read carefully if they still intended to access the money I once set aside for them. I'd moved all my retirement savings to an independent system, revoked all authorizations, and disconnected every shared link with the family accounts. I didn't hide it, didn't announce it. My signature was still steady, clean, unwavering, like the one I signed the day I brought my husband home from the service. It was winter then, too. Cold just like today. I sat down and wrote a letter to Mia. Thick ivory paper, a snowflake embossed in the corner. I'd bought it last year for Christmas cards that no one remembered to ask if I ever mailed. I used a violet ink pen. Short sentences, no advice, no instructions, just this. I'm not leaving you. I just don't want Mia to grow up carrying the same regrets I did. I folded the letter, placed it in an unsealed envelope, and left it beside the photo album. The bag I took wasn't huge. A gray wool coat, a photo of George wrapped in a hanky, a small savings ledger, 2 pairs of thick socks, a pouch of oatmeal cookies, my ID, some cash. Not much, just enough to get somewhere nameless. I left the house just as snow began to dust the front steps. The sidewalk was still dry, but not for long. I locked the door, but I didn't take the spare key. No one saw me leave. No one asked where I was going. No one knew it was the last time I'd step across that threshold as someone who belonged to that house. Clara waited at the end of the street. She didn't wave, just tapped the steering wheel gently when she saw me. No texts, no explanations needed. Clara understood the way old friends do. No history needed, no future expected. Just a quiet reason for neither of us to ask more. I got into the car. The windows fogged. Our breaths collected in droplets. The engine rolled slowly, turning onto a side road. I didn't look back, but when the car stopped at the stop sign, I glanced at the rearview mirror. The house was still there. No lights on. No curtains drawn. I didn't cry. The bus stop was beside the old pottery shop. The sun hadn't fully risen, but the shop's window reflected a faint yellow glow. The owner, an old guy with long gray hair, always opened by 5 a.m. I once bought a green teapot there, the kind with chipped glaze at the rim. He never remembered my name but always said, "People who drink tea don't need to be in a rush." I sat on the bench by the stop. The cold wind snuck through the collar of my coat. I didn't pull up my scarf. I wanted to remember the cold clearly, as vividly as the moment I left. Clara didn't say anything else. She sat beside me quietly. One of her wool gloves had a loose thread. I saw her aged hand curled gently underneath. "Haven't decided where yet?" she finally asked. No pressure. Just filling the air. I nodded. I don't need to know where. I just need to know I won't be staying. The bus was 5 minutes late. A silver long-haul liner. Low steps, few passengers. The driver nodded as I handed him my ticket. I walked down the aisle and chose a window seat. Claire didn't get on. She just touched my shoulder, then turned back toward the old street. The letter, I leaned my head against the glass. No one was looking for me. No one waved from the house. No messages, no calls. I thought of the folder. Wondered if they'd opened it yet, If Alyssa realized it was a full revocation of access, or if she dismissed it as some quiet stunt she could fix with a few calls. I didn't know, and now I didn't care. On my lap, I held the old bag tightly, not for fear of money, but because inside was the one memory I chose to bring. A sticky note Mia wrote when she was 9. Grandma is home. She's the place I can breathe. I smiled when I first read it. Now it stung. Outside, the lampposts receded one by one. Their lights faded gently. Maine blurred behind me like a photograph developed with the wrong focus. And I sat there, still unnamed, still unseen, a figure in motion no one thought to follow. I left no Christmas wishes because I've stopped waiting to receive any. When they came home, dinner wasn't cooked, the table was bare, and their mother was no longer there. I don't know if it was cold when they opened the door. Maybe it was already dark. Maybe the snow had started to fall. But in that house, the one I spent my whole life keeping in order, no one put a pot on the stove. No one set out napkins. Dinner, like so many years before, existed only in memory, never in reality. I didn't leave a long letter, just a single page tucked neatly inside the folder. A revocation of account access. A notice that all legal matters had been reassigned to private counsel. And one short line at the end. I'm fine, but I want to live for myself just this once. They didn't call right away. Maybe at first they thought I just stepped out to run an errand. But when they opened the fridge, empty, no soup, no pie, no scent of anything, that's when something unfamiliar crept in, absence. The very thing I used to bring into that house each day through silence was now the thing that terrified them most. Scott called Clara 3 times. No answer. Alyssa stood staring at the wooden kitchen chair. The one I used to sit in almost every day. Cup of tea in hand, eyes on the garden. They had told me, you can sit there. Just don't distract Mia. And I'd nodded. Back then I thought being allowed to sit was enough. This time Alyssa said nothing. No harsh words, not even a sigh. Mia came downstairs, music theory notebook still in hand. She didn't ask, where's Grandma? Didn't cry, didn't panic. She just said softly like a breeze slipping through a cracked door. Did she say anything to me? No one answered. Where I am now there's not much noise. It's a small log cabin deep in a pine forest. Clara found it back when her husband was still alive. The owner has since passed. His nephew rents it out cheap. No questions, no background checks, just quiet. Clara brought a few essentials. Whole grain bread, homemade jam, a hand-drawn map of local bookstores. She didn't ask why I left, just said, if you want, I can leave you the spare key. I nodded. In my bag was a photo of my husband back when he worked at the lighthouse. And a smaller photo, me and Mia, from a state park camping trip. My hair was a mess, her shirt stained with ice cream. Both of us laughing until our faces hurt. I taped that photo onto a card. Wrote one line on the back. If one day no one is stopping you, come find me. I sent it just to Mia. No other words. Alyssa found the envelope first. Probably because Mia's name was handwritten in my steady script. Scott opened the larger letter. When he got to the final line, I could picture his hand freezing, then slamming the paper on the table. He had never read his mother's letters carefully, but now he had to. In the letter I didn't accuse, didn't scold. I just listed, 1. Bank accounts are no longer linked to the family. All legal decisions are now protected under personal counsel. Any disputes will go through my lawyer. I'm not coming back. Alyssa shouted. So that's it. She's cutting us off? Just like that? No one responded. Mia stood still, holding the card. Read the words on the back of the photo, then folded it, tucked it into her coat pocket. That night no one cooked. Scott dug through the pantry, pulled out a can of soup, but the gas had been turned off. I forgot to mention that. I did it that morning like I always did. Turning the valve to the off position, wiping the burners with a cloth. Same routine as ever. Alyssa opened the fridge. Nothing but a little milk and an old carton of apples. Cold air and silence. The house hadn't changed. But without me in it, everything felt hollow. White Christmas, they asked Clara where I was, but she just shrugged. She's gone. Gone to live her life. And I used to be the one waiting at the dinner table. Now I'm the only one invited by myself. For the first time in years, I turned on the radio without lowering the volume out of fear of disturbing anyone. The music played just loud enough, not blaring, not whispering. White Christmas. The old version, the familiar voice, the slight quiver in the chorus. Alyssa used to frown at it. She would say, "That song's too cheesy. Mia needs quiet to study." I used to turn it off automatically, like switching off a light when leaving the room. But today I am no longer in that house. This kitchen now belongs to me fully. No need to ask. No need for permission. I poured tea, cinnamon, and honey. The scent spread slowly like snow brushing against the wooden window frame. Outside, the sky was a pale white. The pine forest blurred in soft fog. Inside, yellow lamplight and the quiet crackle of the fire. No one coming, no one leaving. I hung a wool stocking above the wood stove. An old one Mia had started knitting one year, then gave up on. I washed it, let it dry on the windowsill, folded the cuff neatly. Inside, I placed a few red-wrapped candies, the kind she once begged for at a Christmas market when she was small. Just placed them there, not waiting. I picked up a picture frame, a photo of the two of us under the big oak tree that year, and placed it beside a new wooden frame. Simple. No decoration. Inside there's nothing, just space. If she ever comes, she can write the first letter herself. I turned on the heater. It clanked for a moment, then settled. The wind howled through the door frame, but not hard enough to make me cold. I used to think that being alone on Christmas was something to fear. But I've learned what's worse. Being surrounded by people who no longer see you. I didn't turn on the porch light. Not out of anger. Not to make anyone feel guilty. Just because for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for anyone to come home. The pie I reheated from yesterday had a tougher crust, but the apple cinnamon filling still smelled sweet. I cut a small slice, placed it on a cracked ceramic plate, didn't rush to eat, just left it there across from my teacup, as if I were still sharing dinner with someone. But this time it was with myself. I made one phone call. Didn't talk long. I said, "I'm okay. Don't come looking. But if Mia ever needs me, the door is open." Then I hung up. No waiting for a reply. No need for anyone to agree with my choice anymore. Outside, the snow kept falling. I pulled the curtains and sat near the window. In my hands was the old photo me at 17. Braids in my hair, eyes steady. Mia once asked me, "Grandma, did you ever do what you really wanted?" I had only smiled. Now I know the answer. I didn't win anything. Didn't take back what was lost. I simply chose to stop needing permission to live for myself. Slow but certain. Quiet but true. I used to believe that sacrifice was love. But now I understand that if you don't learn to value yourself, even the ones you love can turn away. For the first time in years, I no longer set a place at the table for anyone else. Just one cup, one slice of pie, and a quiet that feels just right. Not because I'm lonely, but because I no longer feel unnecessary. Some people spend their whole lives giving, but forget one simple truth. If you don't learn to value yourself, even love can grow cold. Like an old sweater that once kept the whole family warm through winter, then tucked away in a drawer unthanked, once no one feels cold anymore. If you've ever stayed quiet so you wouldn't disturb anyone, if you've ever stepped back so someone else could move forward, maybe today is the time to ask, do I still have space in my own life? And if this story touches something in you, share it with someone else who might also be searching for their voice.